Good morning. Welcome back to Financial Issues. I'm Dan Celia. I know many of you might have questions in reference to Obamacare, as I talked about in the last segment, the end of the last segment. We have Twila Brase is going to be with us, and Twila has agreed to take some questions in the next segment. So, again, let me just tell the rules before we start with Twila and we start talking to her. The rules are this. One question. We're not going to have an opportunity to chat. But you're going to ask your question, we're going to hang up on you, and then we're going to go to the next person after Twila answers the question. So if you want to queue your call up now, if you've got, I know we all have 100 questions of what this is doing to us personally, our families, the economy maybe, or America. But pick one. 866-300-9298. 866-300-9298 if you've got a question about Obamacare. We've got not one of the experts, but the expert, as far as I'm concerned, on this. This is somebody that eats, sleeps, and just lives this stuff. And we ought to be so grateful that we have somebody out there that is a watchman on the wall for us at a time that we need it more than ever. And Twila, welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here, Dan.
Twila, I first of all, I want to thank you for being here. I want to thank you for being willing to take some phone calls. Sure. That is great. I know our listeners are going to appreciate that. Twila, I was looking, and by the way, folks, if you haven't seen Twila's newsletter website, make sure you sign up for it. CCH Freedom, CCHfreedom.org. Twila is the president of Citizens Council for Health Freedom, and she has. Twila, I want to talk to you real quickly. I'm just going to let you kind of give us some. You've give us some insights on your website in your newsletter. You had protect privacy or accept government control. Well, right. Like everybody else, I saw that headline and. You got to read on. And then when you read on, you don't like what you're reading, but you keep reading. And one of the things, you said so many things, a genetic grab, control of doctors, health equality, and so on and so forth. Give us a recap and tell us about the very, very important things in reference to all of that, since we might not have time to get to all of them. What people really must know today.
Well, one thing that I always like to say is he who holds the data makes the rules. Yeah. Now, I've done this for a long time. I've looked at data since the very beginning, and you know as well as many people that if you want to control people, if you want to control their lives, you can look at it over totalitarian societies across the centuries. You have to have data on them. You have to know what they're doing. And so these surveillance systems get started. Well, nowadays, we have all these databases. We have President Obama, who in the Recovery Act, or the economic stimulus, gave $27 billion for the creation of interoperable electronic medical records. So that means that they can all work together, right? They can be linked together so that you can have a profile of you. You can have the entire medical record across your lifetime in order to analyze you, in order to analyze your doctor, in order to penalize your doctor if your doctor doesn't do standardized practice according to however the government wants it done. So there are the systems that are being set up in this country to use the hospital, to use the clinic, to use the doctor in order to get a complete dossier, as it were, on you. It's just phenomenal, and it's happening under most people's radar. They really don't understand it. They sign the HIPAA form because they think it means that their privacy is protected, and all they're doing is signing a form that says that they know their privacy isn't protected, that all of their data can be shared for all of these purposes. But most people don't actually look at the notice of privacy practices to realize it's a notice of no privacy practices. So, when that whole thing was set up, it was set up to convince the American people by signing on the dotted line that they had privacy. You say the word, you have them say, you have them sign on the dotted line, and they think it really is privacy, but it's not. And so what it is just these laws and these rules at the genetic level, at the medical record level, and in the health in the ObamaCare health insurance exchanges. All of this is working together to build this extraordinary national health surveillance system that your doctors, your clinics, your nurse practitioners, your hospitals will all feed into, and it will be accessible by the government.
So, Twila, if I go into the doctor's office and they give me this HIPAA form to sign, and I refuse to sign it, can they refuse to see me?
The Department of Health and Human Services has on their website instructions for doctors and clinics if people refuse to sign the form, because people are allowed to refuse to sign the form. As a matter of fact, the law says that that doctors and clinics have to make a good faith effort to get you to sign the form, but they cannot require you to sign the form. And so we are actually taking people's stories and we're going to put them into a booklet of what has happened to them when they have tried to refuse to sign the form. Now, some people have been denied health care. Some people have just been given the runaround. Some people have been told that they're going to be denied, and then they actually get it. The fact of the matter is the law is that you can refuse. We encourage you to refuse because let's just say somewhere down the line you have given very confidential information to your doctor, and then somebody repeats it back to you in your face, and you realize, oh my goodness, my doctor did not hold that information confidential. Or you get a letter in the mail saying, we know this about you, and we'd like you to be part of our research study. And you think, well, what happened there? And when you complain to your doctor, they will pull out your HIPAA form, and they'll say, you signed right here that you had read our notice of privacy practices, and therefore you knew how much we would disclose or how often we would disclose or to how many people we would disclose this information. So you should not have said that. You should not have come in here. You should not have come for that diagnosis if you didn't want anyone to know.
So, it goes back to what you said earlier, that data is power. I mean, the more and more control for the government. I suppose we need to have a campaign to let people know their rights in and around that. But I wonder how many doctors know. I mean, I wonder how many doctors' offices, I should say, know that it's not a big deal. I mean, that they can, they have the right to not do that.
Right, and unfortunately, a lot of the doctors now have joined these big practices or come under big, major healthcare systems because of the electronic medical records. It's so expensive, this mandate that was in the economic stimulus bill. This mandate to have these electronic medical records is so expensive that the independent doctors, lots of them, are not able to survive outside of the big systems. And so then they don't have as much control to just, for you to just chat with them. However, you are still allowed not to sign the form. Now, what some of those big systems have done is they have put variable consents all on one sheet of paper. So, like the consent for treatment, the consent for research, the consent for payment, and then this HIPAA piece. And so they give you only one signature to sign. And this is actually wrong. This is one of the things we're trying to stop, is this multiple consents with one signature, because it's coercive. It coerces you into the rest of them. You have to try and, cross them out or say, I don't agree or whatever, but that's what you should do. That's what you should do. You should say, I don't agree. You should cross it out and say, I refuse. On the things that you refuse to do, like, refuse to just be a research subject, because you have to think about what they could do with your data. And so it is more difficult in a lot of those really big doctor practices, but individuals should say no, and then they should tell us their story about what happened. We're already starting to put together the booklet. We've already got stories. We would like even more stories.
And where can they give you that?
That's one of the ways we can stop this, is by heralding what's happening around the country when people actually exercise their right to say no to signing this form.
Where can they share their story? On your website?
We're shortly to have an actual page for this.
Okay.
But right now, they simply go to our website and they click on the email button and they just email it to us, and then we will be in contact with them if there's something that is not exactly clear to us. Plus, we will get their consent. Once we've written it up, we'll send them a consent that we can actually publish it.
Great. The website, folks, is CCH Freedom. CCHfreedom.org. What are some of the other threats or things that we need to be aware of right now that you wrote in your newsletter that is so important to us?
Well, I think the issue about baby DNA. Now, a lot of people don't know about this issue because it's really very hidden. It's very secret. A mother goes to the hospital to deliver her baby. Within 24 to 48 hours, the heel of the baby is pricked, and then drops of the baby's blood are put on a special card that has special filter paper on it. Now, most mothers think that this card is going to the hospital laboratory, but in fact, it is going to the state government. And then a lot of the state governments are actually keeping those cards, which is the DNA of the child, and they're keeping those cards indefinitely for research purposes. And so what we have here is 4 million children, newborn citizens, being born every day, and many of the state health departments are now keeping the child's DNA as government property for their own purposes. Now, in September, the federal government paid 4 institutions to develop newborn genomic sequencing. Now, genomic sequencing is the actual laying out of the child's complete genetic code and putting it in a government record and putting it in the child's medical record. So the whole plan here, $25 million, is to build a system whereby every baby, when they're born, is genomically sequenced, their entire genetic code laid out and analyzed and put in a record. Well, this should never happen. First of all, we have the right not to know our own genetic code because we may not want to know what it says. But right. We also have a right to keep anybody else from knowing it and using it. And what most people don't understand is that state governments are already keeping this, and many of them are probably going to be part of the research to build this system by using the blood spots, the DNA, the baby DNA that has already been collected in a variety of states, and they are keeping it. States like Minnesota are right now moving to repeal parent consent over the storage and use of baby DNA. Some states like New York keep it, I think, 23 or 25 years. Some states keep it indefinitely. Minnesota will keep it indefinitely if this bill passes. So the whole plan here is that government will actually own the DNA of every citizen born in this country. And so we have special baby DNA cards for people so they can know what to do. We ask people to go to their health department and say, I want my baby's card back. Give me my baby's card back, and don't keep any of those blood spots. Don't punch any holes. Actually, what they do little punches in these 5 little blood spots, and then they use those punches in laboratory tests. And so what you want is the entire card back after newborn screening. If they've taken something already for a research project, you can't do anything about it. But if you can get your card back, they no longer can hold your DNA. They no longer have it.
So they don't ask permission to do this. It's just a matter of routine.
They don't ask permission, and they don't tell you. And so it's, the hospital is becoming a scarier and scarier place to go to because of all the data collection, because of the fact that the government has mandated all these medical records be hooked together in electronic and linked so that they can have access to the data, because of the birth certificates because they are now collecting private information on there, private information about the mother, like does she smoke, how often does she exercise. This is all about collecting data for the government. And now we've had it for several years, this baby DNA issue where the hospital doesn't do this test. They send it to the government, and the government has decided that the DNA is very valuable, and they have started to keep it.
It sounds like we're talking about communist China. That's what's so scary about all this. But the other thing I want to ask before we go to break real quick. So we have another extension for 2 years. People that have a plan that wasn't qualified under Obamacare can now keep it. Too late for me. They already chucked my plan. My prices, I had to get reinstated by Aetna after a long, long battle because they dropped me and put me into the exchange. But I'm paying $275 more a month now. But so it's too late for me. They're not going to reinstate the plan that they dropped. Do you see that as does that matter at this point?
Well, first of all, the president puts out this unilateral executive decision, right, that he really can't do, but people are following him anyway. Right. But one thing to know is it's only if the state allows the insurers to do this, and then only if the insurers decide that they will do it. So it's not like anybody who decides that they want to keep their policy can keep their policy. The one good thing about this, perhaps, is that it does make it more difficult for the health insurance exchanges to actually stay viable. And
well, that's good.
We, of course, want to get rid of the exchanges.
Yeah, that's good. That's good news. We're coming up on a break. Listen, we're going to take your questions for Twila on Obamacare. We've got one line open, 866-300-9298. We'll be right back with Twila Brase.